Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. It's Matt here for another We Love Cycling podcast. Now, on this edition of the podcast, I speak to We Love Cycling's very own Saoirse Pottie, all the way from her base in Antarctica. Yes, she's currently in Antarctica, or was when I actually recorded this. Now, she gives us a really good insight into the inspiration behind her starting bikepacking in the first place. She gives us a wonderful story about her first ever bike. She gives us a sense of why she loves it so much, and also she gives us some very good tips on how to start bikepacking ourselves. This was a wonderful chat. You're going to love it. The countdown has finished and we have liftoff. We're going. Saoirse, thank you very much. Can I just say, if I pronounce your name right, I bet you get this all the time.
No, really good job. Saoirse, it's an Irish name, and it's very it's like Siobhan being Saoban and all of those. Yes. It's a complicated one, so well done.
Well, I'm glad I've got that out of the way with not a bad score. But Saoirse, you've just recently joined We Love Cycling, and I was chatting to the guys there about what podcast to do this year, and I thought, well, straight off the bat, we need to get to know you a bit more because you're part of the family. I've already been amazed and intrigued with what you do. You clearly have got a genuine spirit of adventure about you. So can we, firstly, before we kick off properly, you're somewhere quite far flung right now. So can you describe to me and to the listeners, the viewers, where on earth in the world are you right now?
Yeah, I have officially crossed into Antarctica, technically. So I'm cycling through Antarctica at the moment. I'm at the very bottom, or very near bottom of Chile, in a place called Punta Arenas. And then tomorrow I will cross over into the island Tierra del Fuego, which is like the land of fire. And down to the very, very southern tip, Ushuaia, which is fin do mundo, end of the world. So it's the very southernmost tip that we can access. And then after that, you're into, proper Antarctic with the penguins and everything else. But yeah, I'll cycle past some penguins tomorrow, which I'm really excited about, the king penguin. So that and the wind tell me that I'm in Antarctica.
Flipping heck. That's amazing. It's a part of the world. The furthest I've been to South America, went to Colombia a long, long time ago, and I found that amazing. But it sounds like you've been on an amazing adventure. Before we put what you're doing right now into a bit of context in terms of the journey that you're currently undertaking, can we just rewind a little bit? And how on earth, if you don't mind me asking, did you get into doing this sort of thing? I do know a little bit about you come from horse riding, but can you just set all this madness, this wonderful madness in context? Why on earth are you at the other end of the earth? And where did this inspiration come from? Why did you decide this is what you want to do?
Yeah, you're right. I grew up horse riding. My mum was a horse trainer, which I think has given me a love for adrenaline. I like not fully ever being in control and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, which I think the bike gives me. But I worked in conservation for a number of years, and I work as a guide, hiking and cycling guide. And anyone that works in conservation knows it doesn't earn that much money. It's a really cool job, but doesn't earn that much money. And I was in my early 20s, and all of my friends were going to Amsterdam. There's a big event happening there. There was a group of 10 of them. And I, like many things else, are vastly unprepared. And I did that thing where you're like, oh, I'll book the flight later, I'll do it later. And they got really, really expensive. So it was, I don't know, way more, like 5 times what it should be because of this thing is going on. And I thought, well, all my friends are going, I want to go. And I had 2 options. And one was the mega bus. And then the other, which is like a £5 bus, and you're on it for many hours. And I was like, oh, it doesn't sound that much fun. And then somewhere just in my head, I was like, well, I could just cycle there. And bearing in mind, I had a bike for, going to and from work. So like 3 or 4K, that kind of was my maximum distance. Maybe if I didn't start, I'd go on a little short, 10K cycle. I've never cycled more than 10 kilometers in my life. Blimey. And I didn't have a bike. So I went on Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace, one of those things. I bought a bike which had like down tube shifters. So it was like late
Okay, yeah.
70s, 80s bike. This is going to
Yeah.
make you cringe, but my
This is
knowledge
brilliant,
of
though. I love this.
my
This
knowledge
is
of
right.
bikes.
Down tube shifters is what they're called. Yeah.
Yeah, my knowledge of bikes was skinny tires go faster than fat tires. That was all I knew. So I looked for a bike with the skinniest tires, not the smart move. And I got this bike from the, early 80s, I think it was. And I was very lucky that I lived in a shared house, and the other people there, they had camping equipment, so they just put a tent on there, like a decathlon tent, and a sleeping bag. I put my ukulele in there. It was like a house on top of this bike that is not meant for cycle touring. And then
This is brilliant.
I just set off, and took me about a week maybe to get to Amsterdam. And it was just such an amazing adventure. Yeah, I'm going to side story, but I was cycling there, and I got to Rotterdam, which is maybe a day cycle. On this time was a day cycle before I got to Amsterdam. And as I'd been coming into Rotterdam, I had been hearing these twings, from the back. And I was like, I don't know what
Yeah.
that noise is. I have zero mechanical knowledge. And obviously it was the spokes breaking.
Right.
And I had maybe like 5 or 6 spokes had actually broken off the
gosh.
thing. And I took it into a bike shop, and they were like, this bike is so old. We don't make wheels like this anymore. If you want to, like, the cost of the wheel was more expensive than the bike. And I'd had to wait for like 2 weeks to get it ordered in. And just before I'd left, I'd had like some people around, and somebody I worked with was into bikes, and I showed him the bike loaded up, and he was like, laughed and was like, there's no way you're going to cycle that. That is not going to make it to Amsterdam. And I'm quite a stubborn person. So when someone says to me, you can't do it, there's something in me that wants to do it even more.
Okay.
So I was in this situation where I had 5 broken spokes, and I was like, well, I guess I'll just keep going and see how far I can get. And I cycled out of Rotterdam maybe for another 4 or 5 kilometers. And the last spoke went, and the whole wheel was, side to side. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is it now. And I was stood on the side of the road. And this is before you had like data roaming. So I just stood on the side of the road, just like looking dumbfounded at this bike and being like, oh, cool, I don't know what I'm going to do now. This lady came up, and she was like, there's a bike shop, a kilometer away. I walked there. I walked into the bike shop, and they laughed at me, and they're like, no way have you cycled that from the UK. Because I went, I didn't even take a direct route. I was like, let's make it an adventure. So I went down into Calais, then up through Belgium, then into...
Okay.
Well, I was like, if I'm going to do it, I may as well make an adventure from it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went in there, and they laughed at me, and they said, hang on a second. They went round, and in the skip in the back, they had this old bike, and they took the wheel from the bike that they had in the skip, put it on my bike,
Okay.
and then I cycled off and went to Amsterdam. It was great. But that was my first bike trip, and I think it was very simple, very cheap, and it made me think, you have a bike, you can go anywhere. You can literally I was like, I've never cycled more than 5K, and I've just crossed 3 countries. So that's pretty cool.
That's amazing. I mean, the thing is, fundamentally, that's one of the most beautiful things about the bike. They are, I think, one of the finest inventions ever.
Yeah.
But they're so liberating, aren't they? And
Yeah.
if you look at, I mean, that's pretty amazing. I'd like the fact that the way you moved on was just to get a bike out of a skip, but flipping heck, that's amazing. So did that trip then, was it fair to say it was like a week-long epiphany for you to think, well, this is amazing what I can do? So what was the next step for you after that then? Did you completely recalibrate and decide this was what you wanted to do for the near future, or these big adventures that you're doing now, how did you come to doing what you're doing now, basically?
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier when you look back and be like, oh, these are pivotal moments. I think that was definitely one where I was like, I tend to throw myself in the deep end and then hope I swim. And that was
Sounds
one
like
where
it,
I was
yeah.
like,
Sounds like
oh,
it.
cool, I've made it. I wasn't sure I was going to make it, and I did, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, after that I worked, so I was working in conservation, and I ended up working abroad in different places, and it wasn't very suitable, like wasn't lifestyle with a biker to do that.
Okay.
So it was maybe another 5 or 6 years, and then I came back to the UK, and I was getting the itchy feet, and I was like, I need a bit of an adventure. And that's when I came back into I got a bike and I met up some friends. It was a cheap way basically of exploring the UK. And for a couple of years, we just did things like the coast to coast cycle, or because I grew up in Northern Ireland. So actually having a way to explore parts of Scotland and Wales and places it's all brand new to me. And on a bicycle, it was just, so cool. So I did mostly stuff around the UK and Ireland, and doing more stuff. I think each time you do it, you challenge yourself more. So it's either, how far can I go? Can I cycle through the night? Can I camp? Like, what's it like to be out all day in the cold, wet, and then set up camp? Or, you push the boundaries a bit more each time. So that's kind of where it started. I did a couple of those like self-supported bikepacking endurance races and like a bit of personal challenge stuff. That's kind of had a bit of a break and then came back to it. And then it's been a nice way to push your own boundaries, I think.
Sure.
And,
So right now, I mean, I know and I've only become aware of you through We Love Cycling because you're part of the team now, and so I thought, okay, this is incredible what you're doing. So, what point in your life are you now? What are you doing professional, or have you taken a bit of a break? Because this trip is a long one, isn't it? Quite clear. This is of epic proportions.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that you're actually holding down a full-time job at the moment. So just where are you in your life, and why is this so important to do now? Because it looks as if, from what you just said over the last few minutes, that your kind of sense of exploration and adventure is just getting bigger and broader and wider. It's just the world is becoming a smaller place for you because you're just going further and further afield.
The world's still a very big place. There's still loads of places to explore. That's the problem. The list you go somewhere and someone adds to the list. So when I'm talking about that period of time, I was working in research and conservation, and very much a typical, Monday to Friday. So I'd do my adventures around the weekend, or maybe a week off. I'd go and do up to Scotland. And I'm in a very privileged position now where I work as a tour guide. So I work seasonally. So I work May to October, April, May to October time. And during those time, that's my life. I have nothing else apart from that. And then I have the 6 months off. So that's why I'm seeking. So last year I cycled five months through Africa. And then this winter I'm in South America. It's incredibly, I think, always feel quite lucky when I'm cycling, but I think, incredibly lucky to have this amount of time to actually explore these places. Because for me, it's a different experience whenever you have the ability or the privilege to move slowly through them. You can actually fully
really soak it up, can't you?
Yeah. That's been one of my biggest learning curves from last year to this year. Last year when I was cycling through Africa, I had like a start and an end point, and I wanted to get to that end point, so I had to push a lot, and it was whereas this trip is more, we stopped for a week and went hiking for a week and did some cool things, so it's a bit of a different pace and a vibe and a different set of challenge and circumstances as well.
And you appear to be, from what I've seen, doing it with a like-minded group of people as well, which makes it even more fun. Sharing, I mean, there's something beautiful about being on your own on a bike and being solitary, but also one of the reasons I got into cycling was just the social side of it as well, sharing experiences with a bunch of mates and having fun. And that, am I right in that? Are you sharing it with a group of people at the moment, part of the journey, or are people coming and going? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly that. I think that's one of the reasons that I also got drawn into cycling and bikepacking and the gravel cycling as well, is in the UK especially, there's an amazing community of cyclists, and a large number of actually women-led, especially in the gravel community. So it's quite, like a different narrative as well. It's super welcoming. I think sometimes, like, I started off, I'm diverting here, apologies for...
Don't worry, I like a tangential conversation.
When I first started cycling, I joined my local cycling group, like the local one near me. And it actually took a year of me training to be like, oh, am I going to be fit enough to join this group? And I think it was because from the outside, it felt quite intimidating because they were mostly guys and
Sure.
mostly men that were doing it. And then I joined it and everyone was super lovely. And I put myself at, the very slowest pace. And actually I was like more towards the performance element of it.
Okay.
But I was like, from the outside, had been like intimidated to join because I was like, I don't want to be the slowest person there,
Sure.
people keeping people up. And I think there's been a huge shift over the last few years of actually more women cycling and having more like media towards women as well. So you actually feel like, oh, this is a place where I could belong. This is a place where there's people that are like me, which is really cool. And I think that whole community kind of erupted at the same time that I got into cycling. So it was really a huge, very uplifting for me to want to continue to do it as well. So it's had a huge effect on me. And I think there's a part of me that wants to pay that back as well. So like if there's something you enjoy and you love, you want to share it with other people.
Yep.
And so this route that I'm on is called the that I first did for the first month is a Equator Austral. It goes through southern Chile and it's one of the most beautiful, remote routes, and it's super suitable for somebody who has the time off. So it takes, it took us a month, but you can do it in a couple of weeks. It depends how fast you want to go. But it's suitable for people who want to do bikepacking as a first kind of time or your first big bikepacking trip, because there's one road, you can't really get lost. Okay. It's very, very beautiful. There's very few cars, so it's pretty safe that way. In terms of resources, you pass a shop most days, and it's very social. There's a lot of people there, so you can go on your own, and then like we've met a lot of people along the way. And so last year I did the cycle through Africa, and I did a lot of that solo, and it was incredible. But it was also quite a challenging thing, like mentally quite a challenging experience. And I wanted this year to have something that was more social and more about having fun and just enjoying being on my bike and like falling in love with just being on my bike and traveling that way again. And so I basically made a PDF that was like, here's the route, here's what you need. Okay. And I sent it out to all of my friends that I thought could be interested in this. And expecting to get maybe like a group of 3 or 4 of us, and 12 people turned up, and I was like, cool, well I guess there's 12 of us going to go cycling then.
That's amazing.
And it's really amazing because some of them, I think 6 people have never been bikepacking before, so I have guiltily collected a number of bicycles over the years.
Right, okay.
And 3 people are on my bike. So I've got I've got my own bike, and then wonderful. I've lent 3 bikes out to other people. And 3 other people bought a bike for this adventure. Some people half of the group have done big bikepacking events. So I think that there's a mix of skills there. There's some people that are super into the outdoors, maybe haven't biked, and there's people that are really strong cyclists but haven't bike packed. And it's really nice. Is a really nice group. Most people join for the first month for this section, and then the second month is the section that brings us into Antarctica where we are now. And so people had other commitments and couldn't join for over a month. So I think there's 6 of us now. There was 5 of us, and then we've recruited 1 more last week.
That's amazing. I love the fact that people are riding your bikes. I love the fact that you've taken it upon yourself to invite these people, and also give them the basics too, because there isn't, like you just said, fundamentally one of the most important things about being a human is sharing stuff. There's nothing quite like it, is there? And we've all been in a situation for the very first time at some point where you learn, but also you take on board what somebody else says, and there's that generosity is massively important. So that's really, really cool. But what I'm intrigued at, and what I want to talk a little bit about how somebody would get into bikepacking. So I'm intrigued if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit what's on your PDF. I'm not saying that people need to ride to Antarctica, but if somebody wanted to bikepack for the very first time and maybe watching this and listening to this and thinking, do you know what, I wouldn't mind giving this a go, and they want to do an overnighter, what sort of essentials, from a bike perspective, would they need to bring, and what should they pack as well? Because you do pack a lot of stuff, but also you've got to be really thoughtful about what you take as well, totally. Which I guess you've improved on and got better at and a bit of an expert at now. But what would be the basics if somebody wanted to bikepack for the first time then?
I was smiling or laughing to myself when you said share some things that are on the PDF, because if you asked any of my friends, they'd be like, lies, it's all lies. I sold them a dream, and there was days when we were cycling along and I could just see it was really tough gravel or a lot of hills or a lot of wind, and I was like, doo-doo. And then afterwards they'd be like, today I thought I was going to kill you, but then the next day they'd be like, oh, but it was amazing, but it's a good thing you didn't come near me that day. I'd know to be like, okay, I'll just avoid them that day, where I told them it was going to be sunshine and rainbows every day. It's definitely a roller coaster of good and bad. But that's why I was smiling, because they were teasing me that I had definitely sold a dream. So I'd say essentials. Honestly, I think the thing is like you said, the more over time you get better at knowing what you want to bring, what's important for you, how you want your setup to be. Some people prefer, like myself, I generally prefer a minimalistic setup, which means that you're super light, but then you can't bring items of luxury. Whereas other people would prefer to bring a pillow, but then they're carrying more, so every day their bike's heavier, but they've got this little bit of luxury, So or people who
kind of a trade-off, isn't there?
Yeah, so
it's
it's always a trade-off of where one person's essential item might not even be on another person's luxury item list. It's really very personal in that aspect. And what I would say is, it's nice as I've progressed. You learn that. You also learn some of the bags and stuff can be quite expensive to invest in, and the bike and everything else can be an investment to make in, and it definitely makes a difference because it's lighter, it's more efficient. But I'd say if somebody wants to start bikepacking, that's not the most important thing. I'd say, you have a bike, that's all you need. Brilliant. If you can get some dry bags from Decathlon, if you can strap those on, fantastic, great, you've got them. And then you go for 2 nights, and if you want to camp, fantastic. If you want to stay in a hostel or a hotel or whatever your budget can afford, do you like cycling for 5 or 6 hours every day for 3 or 4 days? That's the first question. And then it's figuring out what works for you. Some people it's the mindset, which I think comes with a lot of cycling. Either one person can do a route. Okay, so Mark Beaumont cycled around the world in 78 days. Yep. You can do it in 78 days, or you can do it in 5 years. It's completely your choice of how you like to move. And both are really cool experiences. So I'd say don't compare yourself to other people. Just because Mark Beaumont's done it in 78 days doesn't mean you have to. You can chill as well, and you don't have to do it in 5 years. You can find your groove. And just because somebody likes camping doesn't mean that you have to like camping. You can also stay in B&Bs or whichever way you want to do it. But you have to be comfortable and happy and actually enjoy cycling. If you don't enjoy the cycling part of it and the being out every day. Yeah.
And I think, and again, you can't predict what the weather's going to do. I think that's one of the biggest impact factors is obviously the terrain, but ultimately the weather is the master, isn't it? But once you've actually moved through, once you've suffered out there, once you've been cold, once you've been really hot, once you've got that done, it really does prepare you. It does put things in wonderful context, and I think it's fair to say, and I've no doubt you would agree, that you get an even better buzz off it, don't you? And you look back after being miserable, because it does happen. Let's be honest, it does happen, and then you can almost laugh about it, can't you? But it's I just think once you've suffered and once you've felt a little bit of hardship, I just think that's fuel to try and improve and get better and go not so much faster but further. I think it's part of the fuel that that pushes us forwards, to be honest with you.
And I wondered, do you do this as well, where I can be out there and it can be just a bit having, not the best time, and I'm like, oh cool, today is a character building day, and I know
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I know that in the future I'll be like, oh well, it wasn't as bad as that day, or then you're like, oh, comparatively, this is okay, or it's the same level, or it's only a little bit worse, and then you've got like a new low to compare it to.
A new low like that, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's definitely part of it. I think there's a part of me that likes the suffering, maybe it's like the hardships, and even I don't know, like even cycling through Africa, like simple things like I'm washing every night with a bucket, the shower, a cold bucket shower, and then you come back and you have a hot shower and you're like, whoa, now this is amazing.
Yeah,
or
you appreciate the simple things, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Or you're on the road every day and you're cooking from your small stove, and then you get to use a real kitchen and you're like, wow, like a real kitchen's such a luxury. I think it's good to remind yourself that like we are incredibly lucky with everything we have that we just take for granted every day in the Western world. Yeah.
That's a really lovely, it's a good leveler, it's a good way of putting it. But can you give us a bit of a sense of what this year is going to look like, or this next phase? So you're heading further south, you've got penguins on the way. I should be looking keenly at your Instagram for images of those. But how far south are you actually going to go? How far into Antarctica are you actually going to venture? And then what's next for you this year after that?
So I probably only have like a week left of cycling, of this trip. So I'll go to a place called Ushuaia, and there's a route on bikepacker.com. If people are looking for routes and inspiration, bikepacker.com is a really cool place to find it. So it's a week to 10 day kind of route, bit of gravel, bit of hike a bike. And that's as far as you can go. That's basically the end of the world, unless you get a boat and then go out to, the Antarctic. And then after that, I start work in April, May time. So I am going up to Colombia. I'll probably do a bit of bike packing there. My main aim is to learn some Spanish, and be still for a little bit, because it can be quite, always moving takes out of your body as well.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the year, so I'll work, but I have, like I said before, I'm mostly based in Ireland when I work. And last year I ran an event that was really cool. It was a mixture of hiking and cycling. And I think it's really, for me, I love like when I push my own boundaries and you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But when you see that in somebody else, so there we had some cycling and we did like a mountain pass, and some of the girls, they were like, whoa, that's the first ever mountain pass I've done. And
that's cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, really cool to see like the buzz of somebody else like achieving something. So I'm running in May. I'm currently trying to organise like an intro to bikepacking weekend, just to share some of the skills that I've built up. And I'd like to do more of those kind of building a bit of a community in Ireland.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of like on my loose plan. And then next winter, I'm open to suggestions, wherever you think, Matt.
I was just going to ask you, you've already ridden to some amazing places, clearly had some amazing experiences, but what's one that you, in the back of your mind, what's on your bucket list? What's the one ride that you would love to do in the next couple of years?
Next couple of years, I think, have you heard of a cyclist called Dervla Murphy?
I haven't actually, no.
Okay. She was an Irish cyclist, and She left Ireland in 1963 and she cycled Ireland to India. And the line is, she's the hardest, like one of the most harsh winters they'd had for like 60 years. The line is, she left Ireland with a map, a compass and a revolver. Those were her three, and her little her bag.
Wow, and different times. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, she's got a book that's called, like, she's written letters back home. It's called Full Tilt, and it's an incredible journal of her fighting off wolves and traveling through all these countries, and super inspirational, because I think at the time it's very unusual for a woman to, especially solo women, to like undertake such a journey. Yeah. So I would love to recreate that. I think that would be a really, really cool thing to do. Go Ireland, India. And it's been interesting being here and being social, like bumping into a lot of other cyclists that have been, because you have to cross the Middle East, and the Middle East is a very complex place.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear other people who have traveled through there and that kind of perspective, because I think something that's really important is being mindful of a couple of things, like never like putting yourself in risk or putting somebody else in risk. I just don't see adventures, like I just don't think that's it's not worth it. It's an adventure at the end of the day. But that being said, the way that we portray places in Western media can be very different to the actual reality of a place. And that's definitely something I experienced here, but especially throughout parts of Africa, is like people look at Africa as a whole, they look at the country as a whole, and they have a perception of it based off what they've seen through the media, but the reality is very different. I think it's very important to speak to people that have been there, lived there, and can give you accurate information. Yeah. But yeah, that would be something that I would, if it was possible, I would love to do. But it, again, is like it's nice to have you've got to build up to those things. I think you've got to build up and...
That's a big one. That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Because I guess you cut, Ireland, then you cut across a bit of the UK, then cut through kind of Europe, maybe go through, top of Italy. I don't know where you go through.
I've got you thinking now, haven't I?
Yeah, I'm just like, like on a movie when you see like the globe and then the little map on an aeroplane or a little cargo. I'm thinking, what way would you go? Because there's so many different routes. But I guess you want to recreate and follow in her wheel tracks, I guess. It's
as much as possible and much as safely possible. But that would be something I'd really love to do. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Saoirse, it's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit. Best of luck on the next part of your trip, and I tell you what, we'll definitely have to get you on the pod again, because you're clearly going to have a lot to talk about and share with us over the coming months, and just remind people who are watching that make sure you follow your adventures on We Love Cycling as well, and on your own Instagram account, which is, just to remind us,
Going Pottie. So my surname's Pottie, and
Going Pottie. I like that. So
accurate
head
name.
to Going Pottie, and head to We Love Cycling, of course, and we'll follow your adventures. But it's been a pleasure. Take care, look after yourself, and hopefully I'll catch up with you very soon.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Cheers.